Julie, would you do the roll call, please?
John Bartlesmeyer,
Here.
Dave Elliott,
Here.
Jim Fewens,
Here.
Kirk Hart,
Here.
Brian Holt,
Here.
Robert Nelson.
Here. Would you stand with me for the pledge of allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would, all the comments I have tonight are thanking Brian, to our newest board member who's here. And I believe according to election, next board meeting, we're going to have someone from KASP come down and do a
Training.
yeah, like a training thing.
Julie has that set up with them. We just need to know what is a better time for you guys, whether we want to do. I asked for 30 minutes to an hour. Well, Julie said it was an hour and a half. We're like, we don't want to do that long. So would 4:30?
Is that, in other words, an hour before the meeting?
We could do it at 4 if you want, and then that'd give you a little more time to eat, or we could kind of eat and listen and do, I don't know.
What do people say?
4:30 is fine with me.
All right,
6 or one, half a dozen of the other, 4:30.
Robert, is that?
4:30 either one.
So we could do 4 if that's,
We could do 4. I mean,
but that might be. a
Four.
little-
Is that too?
Me too.
Was that day?
It's Monday before the board meeting. It's the 21st.
On President's Day.
You're off.
Is it President's Day? Yes, it
It will
is.
be President's Day.
Mhm.
I think it is on President's Day.
Is that good or is that bad?
I don't know, we may be out of town. but
Oh, okay.
I'll,
Okay,
from here. I'll be-
well, it's kind of not just for you, but since you're born.
Well, yeah,
So
yeah,
if,
absolutely.
if it doesn't work for you, we probably will reschedule.
Okay.
So this isn't all about you, but it is. You're like the kicker last night, bucket or whatever. his name is. Man, that's a lot of pressure. So, okay, yeah, just.
I will figure that out.
Okay,
Yeah.
So, I mean, 4 work, doesn't make any difference for me at the time. I'm off Mondays, so, but 4 would give us more of a time
Yeah.
frame. Would that work with everybody else?
4 o'clock.
Let's try to do it at 4.
Okay.
And Brian, let us know if you could.
Yep.
we can push it to March if, so don't feel like, I mean, it can.
Yeah, if you've got something planned, that's something.
We want to have a board retreat as well, and we were planning on doing the board training before we have the board retreat, which seemed to make more sense to me. And then at the board retreat, we would do the same thing, just schedule it about an hour before the board meeting, have an agenda, talk about the strategic plan and try to give you some reports. And this basically talk about what you guys want to see as strategies going forward for this year. And so we were planning on that for March, but we could easily push things back and do March, April, as opposed to February, March.
Yeah, the sooner we know, the better off we're gonna be.
I'll know very soon.
Okay. We have no comments from the public. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, audit report, is that gonna be Julie or is that
No,
Terry?
Terry was supposed to be here.
You may have forgot us. He was supposed to be here when I talked to him Friday, but I haven't seen him yet. I've sent him a note, asked him if he was coming, so
Well, we can put that off, can we?
we can, yeah.
Or if it comes flying in the door.
Yeah, if he comes in later, we'll.
Okay. Approval of agenda, the approval of minutes of previous meetings. Attached are the minutes of the regular board meeting conducted on December 13th, 2021. Approval of treasurer's report, bills and claims. Attached are the treasurer's report and the bills and claims report. Approval of personnel actions, separations. Sean Davidson, assistant football coach, effective January 31st, 2022. Kelly Davis, assistant football coach, effective January 31st, 2022. Jeff George, assistant football coach, effective January 31st, 2022. Carson Hunter, head football coach, effective January 31st, 2022. Brant Newman, assistant football coach, effective January 31st, 2022. Jeremiah Taylor, assistant football coach, effective January 31st, 2022. It is recommended that the consent agenda items be approved as presented. Is there any discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
So move. Second.
Julie, it's been moved and seconded. Would you please call for the vote?
Elliott,
Yes.
Hewens,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
not Meyer. I need to change my page. I'm sorry. Holt.
Yes.
I'll do better next time. Nelson,
Yes.
Bartlesmeyer.
Yes. Now, I should have the page number here. I think I'm right. There we go. 52, is that correct?
Yes.
Good. Approval of interlocal agreement between the city of Fort Scott, Bourbon County, USD 234 and Fort Scott Community College. Rob?
Good evening. As I said before, my voice is this way because I was at the game last night. And I was yelling as loud as I could, but they still didn't listen to me. But we won anyway, so barely. But and you should have in front of you an interlocal agreement again, excuse me, for the neighborhood revitalization program. This is something that you've done before in the past. It lapsed, and so therefore we have to go back through all the process of getting all the organizations to approve. And so I'm just here to ask that you approve the agreement. It's dated to from 2022 to 2026. And so it'll be similar to the last, if you remember it. So any questions?
Thank you. And are there any points of discussion or any questions? Okay. Where is the? Oh, no, I have the agreement. If there's no further discussion, entertain a motion.
So move. I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Julie, would you call for the vote?
Hewens,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Holt,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Bartlesmeyer,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Thank you. very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
See you. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks.
Yes. Next is consideration of public records request policy. A draft of Fort Scott Community College's public records request policy is attached. It is recommended that the board approve the public records request policy. Any questions or discussion?
Did we have any kind of policy in place before?
So.
No, we didn't. And what we did was Julie McDaniel did some research and looked at, I think she started back in November, December, and looked at what many of the other schools have as their open records request. And I think she also it's identified in there, but looked at the actual statutory language that is the open records request. Talked with KASB. For those of you who don't know, KASB is the Kansas Association of School Boards, which we belong to the KASB on the legal side of it. It's about, for us, I think it's about $25,000 a year. Is that right, Julie? But it is good. So anytime we have a question about something like this or the training that we're talking about, they provide that. Julie did a wonderful job of putting it together. We're happy to edit it. It says, the first part of it there says records requiring less than 30 minutes to obtain, meaning it doesn't take us too long to draw that, would be no fee. Because we don't want, people to think that we're just not gonna provide anything, because obviously we want to do that, it's transparency, and frankly, it's, it's the right thing to do, and it is the legal thing to do. We do have next, records expected to require more than 30 minutes to produce would be $50 an hour, meaning with a 1 hour minimum, so, we're not gonna charge you for 32 minutes, once we get to 30, it would basically be $50. Records requiring reviewer input by college attorney or redaction, meaning that, we're having to take a look at it and the attorney has to determine what cannot be produced due to either attorney-client privilege or, personnel, HIPAA, FERPA, all kinds of things. The reason we have $200 an hour on there is our attorney just upped their fees January 1st to $200 an hour. And so that's the reason we put that. I guess the only thing that I had asked Julie about is how, how do you know whether it requires an attorney or not? So I guess that just is, we looked in several colleges, Julie could do a better job of explaining this than I, have it like this. I'm not sure exactly how we would, like for you, it's only gonna be $50 an hour, but literally if it's something that we have to have an attorney for, I'm not sure how we're gonna be able to know that exactly if somebody just calls and asks. I mean, you know what I mean? Or if we got questioned, well, why do you have to have an attorney look at this versus why not? I'm not sure. Exactly. You know what I mean? We couldn't come up with any real criteria to say, this one, I don't think we could cover every scenario of this. We would need an attorney to look at, this we would not. So I guess that would just be kind of open to interpretation, frankly.
So an example of one that had to be reviewed by our attorney in the last 6 months was when you guys approved that symmetry settlement.
The symmetry settlement was when that company charged everybody too much money last February when it was really cold.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we were part of a class action on that.
Right, so we had requests for that complete agreement. But Zach reviewed the language of the agreement to determine if it was okay for us to share that or not.
Right there. And didn't you supply, I thought I saw something that you came up with, and it was a list of other colleges and how they did
Right,
this or took care of this. Did you send that to all the board members, or did I?
you all got a handout last month.
Oh, okay. Well, I know I had seen something, and it was just a compilation of what other community colleges did, and how they handled the situation, so.
So I have it in front of me if you want me to say, or if you just needed validation that I gave you something.
Not me. Does anybody else need to hear any of those?
I'm comfortable with what she has here because we had nothing before. So,
Yeah.
We have something on paper.
Okay. Then, is there any more discussion?
I might ask a clarifying question.
Sure.
I mean, if you're putting together records that require an attorney to review it, they're charging us $200 an hour, which means that we're not really being compensated for our time. I mean, it should almost be $250 in my mind, unless I'm misreading.
No, I think
Only
that's
if-
important to think about.
Right, it's only if our people would be doing something that they wouldn't typically do anyway. Legally, as outlined by the Attorney General, we can't charge more than the cost that we incur. And so the reason we can do the 50 an hour is because it's Jacob, who is institutional research, or Julie putting together records that would then be shared, and that covers what would be their hourly rate and any payroll taxes. So the cost of diverting their work for that amount of time.
But I see what he's saying. If-
Absolutely, I do
Because
too.
really, we're not being
Mhm.
covered for Jacob's work or Julie's work, we're just
Mhm.
being covered for the attorney fees work.
Yeah.
My,
That
my,
makes sense.
my point of view would be, no, they would be charged the $250. The initial fee of $50
Would be added on.
would be added
I
onto
get
the
you. Yep.
$200, because you
Is
do
that-
that after, that's my opinion, yeah, it would be done
If that's what.
That's fine.
after
that's what
after
they
we,
decide currently.
community college, had done the research to come up with the information, and then we have to run it by the attorney.
Mhm.
That's just,
That makes
that's
sense.
just part of it.
Yep.
That's.
That's a good point.
That's how I understood it. I mean, and to me, that's fair, because if we're not compensated for our time, then, you know,
So you're saying like if it took an hour for Jacob or whomever to accumulate or to compile the information, we would charge them $50 for
Mhm.
that hour. And then if it took the attorney, 2 hours to try to determine what would be redacted or what we would produce from that, then that would be $400. So we would charge them $450. Okay.
if, when you request the attorney, and maybe you come up with something that we don't need the attorney to
Right.
look
I
at.
don't think a lot of stuff we get a request for, it does not need an attorney, but some of it.
So, from my opinion, and I don't, everybody has an opinion on this, but it's the $50 is the first charge. And if that's all it takes, then that's fine. But if the attorney comes in on it, then it's $200 additional per hour.
Does that need to be somehow asterisk? Because I agree with what you're
I agree
saying.
too.
I think so, because I think otherwise people probably would, Julie, do you,
Then
with that?
how would you word that? Say, if the information of the request of information from the public records can be handled without the necessity of an attorney, then it would just be this $50 for what, I'm sorry.
Would
Whatever
be
it is.
$50 an hour.
Yeah, $50 an hour.
I think we could, and maybe like Kirk said, if you could put an asterisk at the bottom that said, you will be charged $50 an hour for anything more than 30 minutes that Fort Scott Community College has to produce. In addition, to make sure they know that in addition, you will be charged, by the hour, the attorney rate of $200.
Right, something like that,
If an attorney is needed.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just something that says plus or in addition, so they know that you're gonna get hit with, if it's 30 minutes or less, it's free.
Yeah.
But if it's more, then you're really gonna pay the $50 an hour and the additional attorney fee of $200 an hour if it's something that the attorney gets to look at. Do you see what I'm saying, Julie, just at the bottom? But I agree, it probably needs clarified, or otherwise people would be upset that they, because I didn't interpret it like that either.
So we can say a charge of $50 an hour will be assessed for anything produced by a Fort Scott Community College employee, and the additional attorney hourly rate for anything requiring utilization of the college attorney.
Say that, read that.
I know.
For,
by the
instead of
way, it made sense in
anything
my head.
for topics or for issues or for,
If
for-
the attorney,
for documents.
Requests
For
requiring.
requests.
So a charge of $50 an hour will be assessed for records produced by a Fort Scott Community College employee. And
or employees.
and the additional attorney hourly rate of $200 per hour for requests also requiring utilization of the college attorney.
Read the whole thing, please. Or the.
A charge of $50 per hour will be assessed for records produced by Fort Scott Community College employees, and the additional attorney hourly rate of $200 or additional $200 per hour for requests requiring utilization of the college attorney.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Do you think you need to put in there too, even though it says it at the top, if it's less than, if it's 30 minutes or less, no fee? Or is that all right? I mean, it was stated above, I think it's fine. I can see somebody saying, so, oh, if but what if it takes you less than 30 minutes, then I shouldn't have to pay $50. Okay,
Okay, devil's advocate. What if it takes less than 30 minutes and we have to run it by the attorney?
then I guess
And it's
it's
free
$200.
and then $200.
Yeah, free.
That was
Okay.
my thing. on
But it's
the
the
other
cheapest $200 an hour you'll ever get.
Okay. Does that make sense to everybody then? Any more discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Julie, would you call for the vote?
Hewens,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Holt,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Bartles,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Okay, Terry, you want to jump in here this time? You?
Of course, I'd be glad to. I'm sorry, got my time off. I thought it was 6 o'clock for some reason. But,
Well, I'm sorry.
no, I'm glad I'm here. I'm Terry Sursewood, Deal Banner Bolton. I'm glad to talk with you again this year about your annual audit. I trust you. Do they have copies? Okay, good. Anybody want a paper, a hard copy? Look at them, we have them here if you'd like, and I'd be glad to pass them out, but if, whatever, you have them on your computers here, so.
Randy, you want paper copy?
A couple things, there's usually the hardbound, you want one too?
It's sometimes easier to carry one than the paper copy. It is for old ones. So yeah, I could use my paper.
There's the hardbound copy with the blue binding, and there's a loose letter. Let's pull out the loose letter. We'll start with the hard bound copy. This audit was in accordance with US generally accepted auditing standards, but also, as it has always been in the past, because of the large level of federal funding that the college receives, we're also required to do a uniform guidance audit, which means we have additional audit procedures that must be performed for all your major federal programs that you have. And so this year, as we did last year, we did the federal audit. So not only is there a regular audit, there's also the federal audit we do here. And this audit report that's bound gives the summary of everything that came up. If you look at pages 1 and 2 of the audit, it's our auditor's report. It has a lot of verbiage, a lot of things we have to put in there. But the most important thing is the second paragraph from the bottom on page 1, which says, in our opinion, the financial statements above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the college and changes in financial positions and cash flows from the year that ended. This is an unmodified, unqualified opinion, which the highest level of opinion we can give. There are times we have to modify the opinion or change it, but for you, again, this year, you have the unmodified opinion, which says, if you start on page 3 of this audit and read through it to the back, it'll give a fair opinion of the financial activity of the college for the past year. So I see there's a couple newer board members, so I'm going to hit a couple things I don't always hit, but just for the sake of the newer members. On page 4 and 5, 3 and 4, 3 is the balance sheet that shows the assets and liabilities of the college as of the end of the year, June 30th. And then page 2 show all the revenues and expenses. And I always think that's an interesting page to look at. Page 4, statement 2, page 4, shows the tuition that brought in, the state aid, the federal aid, and all the expenditures for the college. $22,128,497 expenses at the college. That's a lot of economic impact that hits this community, and a lot of money to run the college, and a lot of that's funded by tuition fees, of course, but grants Pell Grants and all kinds of other grants. State appropriations help fund that as well. So statement 2 is your revenues and expenses for the year. I could go into detail with a lot of things, but I think more importantly, let's just go to page 13, which I first say we give an opinion about the revenues and expenses and the cash balances for the college, but we also require to verify compliance with Kansas statutes. And statutes, we have I think an 8-page statutory checklist, plus for colleges, there's 4 more pages. We have to verify that you've met certain statutes that the state requires you to meet as a community college. If there are violations of Kansas statutes, we have to cite them in the audit. You can see on page 13, that's a really short paragraph, and that's a good sign. That means we did not have any statutory violations that need to be cited in the audit. And so there's times there might be 3 or 4 bullets here for certain audit clients that you have no statutory violations with your audit this year. So clean opinion on the financial statements and no statutory violations. And the rest of the pages, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the notes to the financial statement give financial information about the college, the accounting, the information about capers, information about your debt, and all that information. It's pretty boring reading, but if you want to read about the college's finances, you can read those footnotes. But I'd like to invite you back to page starting 29, and from 29 to 40-ish is the details and more details of the college's individual funds. You guys know about the general fund, the lead fund, the food service, and the dorm funds, but this gives more detail starting on page 29, the actual revenues and expenses compared to budget for the year and then compared to the prior year. So that may be of more interest to you. But if you'll go back also to page 42, and from page 42 on, these pages are solely in here because of the federal money the college receives, the money that's required to be audited under what's called the uniform guidance issued by the feds. And page 42 shows all the federal grants received by the college this year. And you can see revenues of $9.8 million this year from grants. And you can see what made that up. About in the middle of the page, 4.4 million is your student financial aid, your SEOG, your work study, your Pell Grants, and your student loans that the students draw out and have to pay back. But then there's all other kinds of grants there, and 2 really stick out this year. If you look about 4 lines from the bottom, this COVID-19 grant, $2.4 million. And then there's also a couple COVID grants at the very top. It's a lot more money this year because of the COVID grant. That, God, I hope this thing's petering out. But, it's caused so much stress and grief for about every audit entity I've done. It's added more work to the people, added more things you have to do, and reporting to the federal government. And it's added work to the auditors, because we, by federal law, become federal auditors. When we do your audit, we also have responsibilities to the Fed. So it's been a pain. Let's hope that, and I think it's still going to be big next year. You still had part of that grant you drew down last year. Now this fiscal year 22, you'll draw down the rest of it, and maybe you got a new one yet. I'm not sure, but the point is there's a lot more federal money with that COVID money. But I am pleased to say it was very clean. Your audit records were easy to follow, and we were able to verify the expenditures for the federal programs. And so that's, if you look to page 47, it's a list of findings for the audit. And I'm glad to point out there were no findings relative to the federal programs. No violations of Pell Grant, no COVID expenses that weren't supported by adequate invoices or adequate substantiation of the expense. But there is one thing I need to cite this year, and that is, you can look in the about a couple lines down, a significant deficiency in internal controls. And if you look at page 48, there is a significant deficiency I have to point out to you. The college, every year I've done the audit, cash is reconciled to the bank as of the end of the year. And it's done every month. And this year it was a little bit off. And it was off about $46,000, which is a substantial amount of money. But when you're talking $22 million of revenue expenses, it's more like $200 or $300 for you and me, right? But it's still an amount that you were off. And I've talked extensively to Julie about it, and I think if you'll consider it, I think that all that COVID money that came in demanded extra time from people here, from the accounting department, and they had to spend so much time trying to get the COVID documentation set, because I very guarantee if you had a violation of COVID monies, the feds would be very unhappy, and they may cut off some of your future payments. So there were no troubles with COVID, but we got a little behind on the bank reconciliations. And I think we were off, and so we had to cite that as a weakness, because we need to have cash reconciled monthly. Now, we've talked extensively about it, and if you go all the way to the very last page, the college has to come up with a corrective action plan. And they've done, this is the plan as of June 30th of how it's going to be fixed. And I thank Julie, I should have talked to you before I came here, but you're pretty much reconciled now as of December 31st, weren't you?
I should be reconciling December, and I have just finished October.
Okay.
So I am a month and a half behind.
But you're getting there.
I'm getting
And the
there.
progress is being made. And I think it's important that next year, when we do the audit, this won't be a finding. And that's the important thing. You don't want 2 straight years of findings. And this is the first time you've had it. I mean, it's not like it's every year you've had this, it's just the first time. So I think it was a year that, a year from Hades, maybe, I don't know. There was a lot of bad stuff going on that gave us all stress, and you have to set priorities of what you get done. And I think that given the fact you had no issues with your federal money, it's probably better that you got that right rather than being off a few thousand. But it's now getting back up to balance. It's balanced as of October 31st, and have no doubt by June 30th, we'll have her back into total balance. But I did have to cite it for an audit this year because it was off. I know Julie worked extensively on it when I was doing the audit. She's still working hard on it, but I did have to cite it because it wasn't ready for us at June 30th. So that's the drawback. You know, unqualified opinion, financials are right, there are no statutory violations, no violations of federal law with either the Pell Grants, student financial aid, or the COVID monies, but we did have an internal control issue with the cash they had to cite. Again, I don't think we've ever had that here. So this is a good mark, and that's the only time we ever had it, and we won't have it next year. So that's the plan. Now, I gave you a quick overview of the audit, but if you have any specific questions, I'll be glad to jump in and address them. Otherwise, I'll move to the loose letter. Anything specific about the actual bound audit?
In the audit, on the first part, it did have the endowment foundation also in there.
Let's look at page 3. You'll look at page 3, 4, and 5. Actually 6. We have 2 columns. The first column is the actual college only. These are the numbers you guys see as board members every month, the trustees. But there's an also column that's purely endowment foundation monies. So the audit includes the college money and all the money in the foundation. And that's why there's 2 columns. They're not mingled. There's 2 separate columns. So you can see their primary institution, college, foundation. And the next page, same thing. We have 2 columns. Revenues and expenses for the college, revenue expenses for the foundation. And then in the back of the footnotes, all the the notes back there on pages 30, 35, 40, there's a lot of information about the endowment, the foundation. So yes, they are combined. That's a separate audit also, though. We issued that separately. Just, it was just the foundation. And I'll tell you, there were no violations of statutes or laws with the foundation audit either. But I mean, that was all balanced.
I've been around here a long time. It hasn't always been that way.
No, we've had, for a couple of years, we had some issues trying to get the foundation down.
I just
pat.
want to make that comment that
Right.
things are pretty darn good right now.
And for the foundation, this is included here, but there are none of the issues I've mentioned to you involve the foundation audit. The bank record just for the main bank account. Foundation records tied out. There was no problem with that. And they do have a separate audit. In fact, I'm sure Julie would be glad to send you one. PDFs, but it's just the foundation, but we do have a separate audit for the foundation. And there were no findings or violations with the foundation. You would be concerned about that one since you work there. Are you still on the foundation?
No.
Okay, well, you were on there for many.
Yeah. I just want to point that out, that
Absolutely.
it hasn't always been as good as it is right now, control wise.
Well, I think the thing is with the foundation for years, they had their own accounting records. They still have their own accounting records, but there wasn't any real accounting person overseeing it. You know, the foundation manager, executive director did, but they have a different karma, a different expertise in hopefully fundraising and driving up, raising money. Whereas now the accounting is closely reviewed by Julie and her staff over here. So that makes sure it's in balance every month. So no issues with the foundation balancing, not at all. Now, as far as the actual loose letter, this is a required letter which has verbiage in it that we're required to put in there if there's issues with the audit. Internal control issues or problems with the accounting. And if you look on the top of page 2 of the loose letter, there's the comment about the bank account that I had to mention. But the rest of it talks about any other issues, that problems we came up with the audit, difficulties, disagreements with management, that if we were auditing and we found that you were doing something that we thought was wrong and the management said, no, Julie, or Alicia said, no, we're doing it right, we'd have to tell you if there are any disagreements. Well, there were no disagreements, but we have to still give you in writing, the middle of page 3, disagreements with management. There are none, but we have to tell you that in writing. And this letter has stuff, verbiage in it that's purely required by the accounting auditing standards to communicate to you in writing any issues that came up. Which makes sense. I mean, you as a board of directors aren't there when we're doing the audit. And if we were having issues with Julie or president, and you'd want to know that. So we would have to tell you that with this letter if there were issues. And I'm glad to say there were no issues. So that's the main part of this letter, just communicating to you the issues that were there, which there weren't, but we still have to give you a 4-page letter to tell you that. So that's really all I have for you, but I'd be glad to address any other questions or anything else you'd like to ask me about that I can help you with. Don't ask me how the Chiefs won last night. I left with 13 seconds to go. I turned it off. I disgusted myself.
Yeah, I heard today on the radio that they come out with a T-shirt now. It said something about something 13 seconds or something. Big deal.
I was at a friend's and I drove home, and as I'm driving home, I keep on on my phone. People, my kids were also texting me. And I got home, the person I was at called. I said, okay, he's gonna tell me I left my billfold on the couch. He said, no, they won. So anyway, sorry. Fascinating win. Well, then, thank you all. Appreciate it. I really love doing this audit. It's right here, in my own town. I'm not driving to Crawford or Lynn or Miami County or anything, so I'm glad that you can saw it every year, so thank you all.
Well, we appreciate your doing this for us too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Terry.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you. There's cookies over there.
Oh, I'm not supposed to eat sweets. The chocolate jumped on me.
Uh-oh.
Thank you all.
Let's see.
Now administrative update, I think.
It is, sorry, I need to get back to that page, so we'll do it the easy way, we'll start with Julie. I think there are a couple of written ones in there, Gordon Parks, before we get started with Julie. I was unable to attend Gordon Parks because of the COVID stuff, but which was disappointing because I know it was an excellent celebration for Martin Luther King Jr. Some of you I know were able to attend, and I know that Robert's very involved in it, the Alvin AV Ballet was there, and one of the many things besides the lunch and learns that he had, so you can read about that there. Julie, if you wanna do your update?
Well, as far as our updates, we're just glad to be at work this week with almost everybody here. We've had some sickness, and so that's been kind of interesting to try to cover that. We're finishing up this week, just finished today, the student 1098 Ts. Got that, sending that note out to them tomorrow, but we do know that they're out there and available right now, which is a tax form that has to go out by the 31st to students. 1099s will be finished this week, they're close. Right now, most of what we're doing is reviewing, doing some census type things, survey type things. That seems to be this time frame of year that we do that. iPads, HLC related things. That's primarily, and balancing cash in the financial aid office. We did, or in the business office, we did also send out statements, which is the first time in many a year to students for the fall semester. We sent out statements so they know where they are, so that we can get off on the right foot there to collect that and not be trying to follow up semesters and years later. So we did send out statements to anybody that was in the fall semester and had a balance still due. Financial aid, they're reviewing enrollment, getting ready to post PERF money for this semester for the students to accept. And any Pell grants, that type of thing that come through FAFSA at this point in time. They also have a position that's open, so they're looking to interview for that later this week and hopefully hire. Maintenance, Jared and I talked today, and I forgot it when we had our meeting earlier today, but they're gonna do some remodeling in Greyhound, some in-house stuff while it's so cold. They're gonna work inside some and remove some old wardrobes that are very worn out and redo some of that. So that's where they're headed. Garrison, as you know, we're still waiting on. And anything else that you would have questions about?
Anyone have any other questions?
Question on the dormitory next to administration building where a lot of the football players were at. Is there a plan in place to maybe, redo some of those? I'm sure.
Well, that's part of what they're going to do now that it's cold weather.
Okay.
As far as years ago, they took out some of the old wardrobes out of the Burke Street building and put those in there for students, and they've been patched so many times that they're in bad shape.
So that's called a Greyhound Hall?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so they're doing some remodel of that in rooms that are not
Oh, okay,
currently occupied. And that gives, sometimes when it's cold weather, it's terribly cold to be outside doing
Mhm.
something, and so that's what they have come up with. I think we talked about it once,
Yeah.
And Marcy kind of identified some rooms that are not going to be occupied, so they can begin that. And not leave it all for summer, so they started that.
On my report, one of the things I was gonna talk about was our dorm capacity and where we're at this spring compared to years in the past. We were at 284 students that are in student housing for the spring, and actually one added on Friday, so 285. We were only at 299 last year, and so we're only 14 students down from what we were last year. And actually, back in 2017, we were at 205. 18, we were at 204, and so very accurate there. And then spring we went up to 241, and then last year we were at 299. And so we increased very heavily in the last couple of years. And so even losing the football program in spring, we're only down 14 students. So we've kind of backfilled that to make sure that our numbers are still strong, and we're about 80 students higher than what we were back in 2017. So we're a little down, but not much.
Okay.
Any questions for me?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Well, I was wanted to update you all a little bit on some of the COVID policies and procedures. We are continuing with what we had in place last semester. So if you're vaccinated, you're not required to mask on campus. If you're unvaccinated, we recommend and request that you wear a mask. We've left it up to instructors to make that choice in their classroom. If they want to require masking in their classrooms, they have that ability. Activity sponsors, if they want to require that or not require that within their activities, that we lift that up to them as well. We had another clinic, booster clinic, vaccination clinic on campus. We don't have numbers yet to know how many students or staff maybe participated in that. The students that I deal with are the students that reside off campus. So since the beginning of the semester, I've had, as of today, 22 students that at some point have been quarantined. Right now, I only have about 8 of those that are left in quarantine. So we're following CDC's updated recommendations that 5 days quarantine. If your symptoms have decreased or you're asymptomatic, then you can return with a mask for 5 days. So students aren't having to miss as much class. And they're, when you can count weekends in there for that 5 days, they're coming back pretty quickly. I will tell you, the students that even when they've been sending me their positive, they have to send me a copy document of their positive test results from a health professional, not a home test. That we don't really know where it came from or who did it or when. So we require that they go ahead and get us something from a health professional. But they send that to me, and then I notify their instructors of the days that they will be out, and then when they're able to return, they should have a mask, and then let the students know that as well. And if they're in online classes, that they are expected to continue working in their online classes through their absence. But like I said, I don't think 22 students is a huge number since the beginning of the semester, with only 8 still left sitting in quarantine, and they will be out of quarantine this week. They will be finished this week and be back in class. So I didn't think that was too bad. In advising, we're still working on, we've got some late start classes, so we have students that are coming in and enrolling still. So we're still adding to our spring enrollment. Marcy will be sending us a list here soon of students that maybe have dropped under hours that are living in student housing, and so advising will be reaching out to them to try to get them back up to that full-time status to make sure they're in as many hours as they need to have. Trio has a number of activities already planned. Holly's, we have to get approval for our activities for the entire semester. She submitted that to our program officer, and immediately we got back, it looks great. We're glad to have you doing those things. So every month for the months of February, March, and April, they will try to do a campus visit. So going to a university, they will expose their students to a cultural event, which the ballet here on campus was really nice for them to do this last week. And then they'll also do workshops. And so they'll do financial aid workshops, and they will do healthy living workshops and those kinds of things throughout the month too. So they've got everything planned out, and it's been approved. little story that I'll share that I shared at executive meeting last, and I think it was Thursday. About 4:30 in the afternoon, a young man walked into the front office with a backpack and said, "I'm here to go to college." And he had been in foster care. He had been living in a transitional, basically it's a homeless shelter in Kansas City, Kansas. He had a friend drive him down here. He doesn't have a car, doesn't have a cell phone, and friend dropped him off and left. And that was the night that it was gonna be like 4 degrees. And so called Marcy over in the dorms. She was getting ready to leave for the day. She stuck around. She said, "I'll stay till we get him situated." Precia stayed in the front office so we could get him enrolled and we could get his student IDs so he could eat. We went over to the pantry, got him bedding, packed him up and sent him off. And so he came back to see us Friday. We got him set up. He went to Trio. Trio then sat down with him and reviewed his financial aid, got everything in place. He came back through today. He actually is enrolled in classes that start, a couple of them started today. So it's just really kind of rewarding to remind us why we're here, what we do every day, to help kiddos like that just show up. I just want to go to college.
That needs to be an article written up and put in the newspaper.
Well, when we see how well he does.
Okay. You understand what I mean?
Yes, no, but he is very appreciative. He came back by late again this afternoon, and in this bag that we sent with him earlier today, we put some shoes and socks and a Greyhound hoodie. And he came back in this afternoon with his Greyhound hoodie on and said, everything in here was great. So we'll see how it
I
goes.
think you know what I mean. It's-
I do.
That works out. We need to beat our
And
drum.
that's why we're here,
Yes, that's great. That is great.
but I'm happy to answer any questions
Oh,
on our COVID.
so on the COVID thing,
Yes.
are you using a percentage? Or when do you determine different steps?
You know, we discussed that last semester, if we were going to have like that card, if you hit a percentage, everybody goes to a
Like
match.
2%.
And
or
we have
10%.
never really gotten to a number that was high enough, I think, that really made us feel like we needed to do that.
Okay.
We don't have a trigger.
No,
We have, as you know, we've talked about what we would need as a trigger. And we felt like if we got to the point where it was hard to keep staff and students in school and going on a regular basis, and it affected enough that, we just couldn't go forward, then we would certainly look at it. But to be honest with you, we looked, the trigger numbers are all over the place. Honestly, it's anywhere from 2% to 40% at some of the community colleges. And so it was difficult. So I'm not sure that triggers aren't a good idea. I think in some instances they are. We just never could get a very good handle. And I know that the COVID committee that Janet chairs talked about it. We never could get a really good handle on what was appropriate as opposed to just pulling something out of the air and saying, that's the trigger. Where's the data to show at what point is there really no purpose in going forward? We didn't have those kind of benchmarks to be able to use. And so,
Okay.
going forward, if we ever have another pandemic, heaven help us,
please no.
I think we'll have a better idea about where to place those kind of triggers at. But right now it was just kind of a pull it out of the sky kind of thing. And we didn't think that made much sense either.
Well, as long as I hear that if it starts really major disruption, then you're going,
Yeah,
and
that's-
it's haven't even gotten there yet.
I will say, our faculty became very, very adept at getting things out there to students when they need it. So when a student's in
They're amazing,
quarantine,
yeah.
the instructors still get their information to them and they're on Blackboard and they're not missing the work, or they'll set up a Zoom so the student can be part of class and be on a Zoom link. And so they've been very accommodating through all of this, and it's not near the impact that maybe it was when COVID first hit and everybody had to completely pivot.
Okay,
So faculty's been fabulous.
thank you. Okay.
I will say that what happened was, when we were all shut down back in April of 2020, our faculty and our staff turned it around in 2 weeks where students could really do their work virtually. So through our learning platform, which is Blackboard, which is amazing. that they could do that. And that's even, old codgers like me that aren't used to that kind, literally, that kind of technology. Once that happened, though, it was so beneficial moving forward, because now they've already got that in place, as Rob can tell you. And so since you have that shell of a class being in the platform of Blackboard going forward, then it's much easier to accommodate these students that have to go virtual, for a few days. Even though it's still hard on the instructor, it made it so much more manageable, because literally, they dove in and did that 2 weeks of super hard work getting that up and going. And so I honestly don't know how K-12s are doing it. It's different. I mean, our students are adults and they can pretty easily manage that. We do have computer labs if they don't have access. Now, the trouble is, if they're quarantined, they can't get to the computer lab. But you'll remember that we also provided laptops because of our IT department. So students in the quarantine rooms had laptops where they could sit in their dorm room and actually take care of their classes. And so we have to, also thank IT and all that they did to make sure all that happened. And so really, due to the expertise, dedication, really, and just passion of our faculty and staff is the reason we've been able to come out so well with this and still see pretty much the same student outcomes in terms of student successes that we saw when it was just face-to-face. So,
Okay, thank you.
beneficial.
All right, and I'm going to piggyback on that with a couple of items. The first one is we have upgraded 2 rooms, one at Burke Street and one at Paola, to Zoom capable rooms. So essentially, kind of how board meeting runs with the camera back there, we have 2 classrooms that synchronously can work at the same time. So we have an instructor in Paola who teaches to Burke Street. We have an instructor here who teaches to Paola, or if weather's bad or something's like that, we can still have class. Or if the Miami County campus closes, what we've ran into issues in the past, if Miami County campus will close for weather, we stay open here, those students don't come in, and there was no way for, specifically in nursing, it tends to be where we've had the most issue. There was no way for those students to attend class. Well, now, as long as they have an internet connection, they can attend class wherever they're at, even if the campus is closed. One of the campuses is closed. So it's that update finished on Friday, I believe. Julie, you might have to help me. Friday or today, maybe. So that's good. It had the outdated IDL, ITV technology in it, so we have upgraded there. Speaking from a COVID perspective, it's been a good start to the semester. From a faculty perspective, we have 1 person out right now. So, and that I found out about 4:30 today. So just 1 person. We have 1 back and 1 out now. Late start classes started today. There's a few more that will start next week as well. And so those kicked off for a lot of students in those later starting classes. Finishing up the local needs assessment for Perkins funding to submit to the state. That involves us, Pittsburgh State, Fort Scott High School or Fort Scott School District, Pittsburgh School District, and oddly enough, Columbus School District are part of our local area when it comes to Perkins and workforce funding. So the only other, I guess I have 2 other updates. Still working on the Lynn County Technical Center items. So we have a class rotation ready to go for next fall. And as soon as we get some more things finalized, we can publicly announce what those are. And then for the February board meeting, I'm optimistic that we will have an academic calendar for next year to you all. That'd be a good word to say.
That was very
Optimistic.
They kicked me off the calendar.
Are you sad or?
This might be giving you a little bit of information that doesn't tell the whole story.
It tells the whole story.
No, it's not.
I'm not sure what it doesn't tell.
Are you on the committee?
No.
Okay.
Because you keep drawing.
I did not kick her off.
Yeah,
She said, I don't need to be on the committee. She said that last
I
year.
did.
Yes. And so I replaced you with John Hill.
Okay.
And then in the negotiated agreement, it does say that our suggestions for the calendar should go to the president and then the board of trustees. So really, it was a conflict of interest that you were on the committee in the first place.
And there you have it.
And there you have
All
it.
right.
The way Alicia Stego.
I'm just trying to make sure I check some balances on that. But I would stand for any questions, if y'all have any.
I'll just give some updates on our facilities and whatnot and how everything's going. We are probably within a week of being able to get into the Hill Street building. We needed to have the heaters installed because the turf that's going in, the glue that they put down to adhesive to the floor, needed to be 60 degrees, and the heaters were a little bit late, not awful, but they're supposed to come in last Friday. And so we're hoping to be able to get that first week of February, which is only a week away, to where the turf will go in, and then we'll put down the rubber flooring for the weights. And the weights are scheduled to be installed the 2nd or the 14th of February. So we're only a couple weeks away from being able to get in there. And it comes at a very good time because the weather's still cold and softball needs a place to hit. And so we're kind of floundering around out there. But the turf is we're just waiting on the turf, the actual construction side of things, at the baseball tie-color out there. The construction side is done. If you have a chance to go out there, it looks pretty cool. But we are just waiting on the turf to come in now. We're thinking middle to late February. And when they get that in, it goes very quickly because all the prep work has already been done for it. So we're hoping that we'll be able to be playing on our new fields towards the end of February, which will be fantastic. Baseball will have a couple series weekends out at LaRoche Stadium because we won't be ready here, and obviously they can't play right now. In softball, we'll just be playing for a couple of weeks down on their previous, like the old field, because that one is still in good shape and ready to go. Basketball has been going. They're doing well. Their next home games are next Wednesday and Saturday. We are in conference season, and so those are all very competitive games and they're fun to watch. Golf starts the first week of March, so they got first week of February, so they got a few weeks. And the first national rankings for track came out about a couple hours ago, and our men and women are both number 3 in the country. And so we're really happy about that and what that team has morphed into in the first couple of years we've been able to start it. As far as the foundation goes, the scholarships are going to be open tomorrow for 2022-23 scholarships. And as those applications come in, we're going to immediately get the offers out to hope that we can attract some more students with some of that foundation money. We're excited about that. Sister Conchetta passed away. Her funeral is tomorrow. Her family is looking to set up a scholarship in her honor that'll go to nursing students with a financial need, and I've been working with the family with that to try to get that set up. And I never got the chance to meet her, but she sounds like an amazing person, and certainly will be missed, but her legacy will live on, and we're excited to be able to help some students in her name be able to move forward and attend nursing school. I think that's pretty much all that I've got. If you guys have any questions for me.
Cindy and I drove by a week or two ago, probably two weeks, and we saw the gravel all over the fields. Now, is that everything?
That's the drainage system.
Yeah, and now what goes on top of that?
The turf. And so the turf will come in and they'll roll it out. The construction side of things is done. All of that you see is just about, it's probably 8 to 10 inches of drainage.
Okay.
And so that's why those fields are fabulous, because they just divert everything and soak it up. And there's a lot of underlying pipes and drainage systems that go to the backside, which the fields are ready for the turf right now.
So at that point that I saw, I'm like, well, I mean, just gravel. That's all I can
Yeah, we
see.
can't play on it right now.
No, but I mean, so that's what you're waiting for, is
Yeah.
just the turf to go on top of that.
And so it's two different supervisors and everything. They call them superintendents of the project. And so the construction guy came and he was here probably since late November. And they did all of that work. And then he actually lives in Panama. And so he got on a plane and left. And then the turf guy showed up. And so his crew is out there just making sure that everything is ready for when the turf actually arrives.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Before we go any further, I thought of something, Julie. I really, and I'm sure the board does too, appreciate you with Terry Surser coming in with such a good audit. And I really thank you for all the hard work you do. I know you put in a lot of time. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I have a good staff in the business office. They keep things rolling pretty good, and yes, we did get a little overwhelmed there, and he's right. We basically picked what we thought was the most important, which was the federal grants, and to make sure we kept all of that in line and then did the best we could with everything else. So I don't expect problems, but in the future, but it was a challenge this past year.
Well, I thank you, and I'm sure the board thanks you too. So,
Thank you.
okay.
I'll tell them that.
Okay. Alicia.
And I did want to address the audit, and I too want to add my thanks to Julie. You know, we've talked many times about, we did not know how hard it would be to give away money and to identify federal funds in ways that we could say, okay, this is the most sustainable way we can use the money and still meet the criteria of those federal funds. We ended up getting basically 5 separate sort of funding cycles. And when it started, the criteria was a lot more stringent than when it ended. And so the time we got the last COVID money, which we kind of refer to as COVID-3, there's different names for it. It's all under the heading of HERF, which is Higher Education Relief Fund. Higher, is that right? Emergency, Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. So, like I said, at the end, we were able to use some student debt, which we have a large amount of, and move that to the general fund, which Julie did. So we identified student debt for the months that were COVID affected and moved that to the general fund. A lot of those monies are being used for the Bailey Hall remodel. We were also allowed to move what were considered revenue losses for those COVID months, a percentage of those, to the general fund. So between that money and the Bob and Sylvia Bailey money, we are able to fund the remodel on Bailey Hall, which, as Tom talked about, we always want to make sure that any monies that we get, I think, honor the legacy of those people that gave the money, like this Ag Hall. These were ag people that gave us that money. And we want to make sure that we don't use it for anything except what we feel like is appropriate to honor their legacy in terms of, you know, what their interests were and what their passion was. But this federal money, like Julie said, it has been difficult. And just, you know, when we give it to students, because what they showed that those millions of dollars, some of that has to be given to students. And there's obviously criteria on how you can give it, who you can give it to, all of these different, it's amazing, you know, just the list of things that you have to go through. And trust me, not everybody was happy with us about how it was given. Even though we were, you know, like I said, many times our hands are tied and we're trying to meet these criteria, even though there are different ways that you can do it, we're still trying to identify the way that's best for the student and also best for the institution and best for the community. I mean, how are we gonna tie those things together? So with all of that, Julie and her offices really were inundated with things to do. We did talk today about the fact that we are going to identify somebody, which Julie has, that now has freed up some time since some of this federal stuff we've gotten more in line. And so that individual will be able to work on balancing cash. So what we should be is behind a month. So like in January, we should be working on balancing December's. And so we will certainly get there. I'll just be honest, I told Julie herself does not have the time to do that. She just does not. She can sign off on it, but she does not have the time to do that. So we did pull a job description today, and we have identified an individual that has been working on it too, but really Julie's been the one trying to catch us back up, and frankly, she just doesn't have the time to do that. But I want you to know that we do have a plan for that, and I want you to know how appreciative I am for Julie and her team to be able to get through all of this, because it really is just grant fatigue. It's grant fatigue because these grants, remember, also have to be reported on. It's not like you get the money and it's like, see ya, don't want to be yet kind of thing. It's like, no, you have to, there's all kinds of reporting requirements on this stuff. So it comes with a huge amount of strings. I mean, to the point where we're almost ready to say, you know what, the next go around, just don't even think about us. We don't want it. That kind of thing. So anyway, I did want to say that even though it's been incredibly beneficial, and we're very thankful, of course, for the federal money and the tax dollars that we've received. So I don't want to sound ungrateful, because we are not. We are very appreciative. I did in my report give you just a little, I'm not sure if it was in my report, actually. I think I might have sent it to you an update actually. But the governor's recommended budget did come out. It's kind of interesting. Higher education, for the first time since I've been around, we actually received everything that was asked for in higher education, especially in the community and technical college line. So we will see where that ends up. There's a lot of debate on Excel and CTE, which is our SB 155 money. For us, that's a very large chunk that we depend on. It's also a program that's very beneficial, and that program is for students that are sophomores, juniors, or seniors that take approved technical programs like welding or masonry, or CNA is one that they can receive. Money from the state pays for their tuition, and we don't charge them anything at all. And so it's a wonderful, amazing opportunity for young people to be able to get a credential, an industry approved credential, a licensure that they're able to take immediately into the workforce. Or if they decide that they want to matriculate to a 4-year institution, that they can then, of course, work part-time and end up with not so much debt. So Adam sits on some state committees. I sit on some state committees that are taking a look at, I was on a call today about the Excel and CTE fees. So, there's a lot of discussion. I can tell you that Molly Baumgartner is running a trailer bill on the Promise Act, which we've talked quite a bit, which is the money that, again, can be used for students in those approved technical courses if it will pay for anything but room and board, pay for tools, anything like that. And if those students agree to live and work in Kansas for 2 years or 3 years, 2 years after they receive it, then they get that money. I will admit to you, and we're back and forth with the state on this, we have had trouble giving that money away. You have to remember that a lot of our students do qualify for Pell money, which takes care of a lot of their expenses many times, especially if they're full Pell qualifiers. So maybe what they have left is a $200 bill. It's hard to say to a nursing student, I'm going to give you $200 and pay for everything, but you cannot go to work in Joplin after you graduate because you have to agree to this. Well, for $200, they'd be like, never mind. You know what I'm saying? And so there's a lot of issues. There's a donut hole in the Promise Act where you have to either have just graduated from high school in the last year or be 21, and I say a donut hole, which means then we couldn't give it to some of the 19 and 20-year-olds because that was an inadvertent thing that happened with the bill. So this trailer bill that we're working on, which I saw, this was not the year to be president of the presidents, and I'm very sick of that already. But that's today. We had some amendment recommendations on the bill that we did not, KACCT, I did not sign off on because it did miss a few things. But anyway, the promise bill, these state dollars, we are getting that cleaned up. But it does look, from the governor's proposed budget and what we gave them, it does look pretty good for state funding, especially when it comes to community and technical education. It's not such good news from the state fire marshal's office, which is basically no news at all. I just determined that it's been 11 weeks since we asked for approval on the fire alarm system, and they told us maybe 6 weeks to get that. We really have, so Tom, I don't know if we'll get in there or not. We really have 3 projects held up by the state fire marshal. Which our understanding is that they are short-staffed there. So the Bailey Hall remodel, that request for approval on the blueprint of the remodel went in November the 3rd. The fire alarm for Garrison went in November the 5th. And then we still have not heard back on Hill Street, which is tri-state construction, and they haven't heard back on approval for those folks. So I did visit with Pam Henderson out of Jerry Moran's office, who did contact the governor's office about this, but no movement. I will be in Topeka Thursday morning at 7:30. We have a KACCT breakfast for legislators, so we will be in the Capitol when they come in. I will catch our legislators and ask them if there's anything that they may be able to do to address the situation. I don't know that there is. At this point, I'm not sure when we'll get in Garrison. We have to get approval on the fire alarm blueprint before we can, and you have to ask for everything through their portal. And then we have to ask for a final walkthrough of Garrison through their portal. And if it's on the same timeline we're on now, it will be June before we get approval. And we had hoped to have kids in there in September of last year. So, I visited with John about it, and, I guess I don't know what we can do to speed the process. My understanding is that everybody's having issues, that they are short-staffed. It is highly frustrating. I mean, it's costing us a lot of dollars as we're paying for students that should be in Garrison to be housed at the hospital. We have a month-to-month lease with the county out there. So so it's not such good news on that front. And I honestly, I've kind of pulled every string. I'll see what happens Thursday morning. I will certainly give them some information that they can take a look at and see. And I guess I feel like we've kind of been walking on eggshells with them, because you don't want to push so far that you get like to the back of the line, because that's what we've been told. Well, if you complain, you just go to the back of the line every time. So, and then, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You don't know how squeaky to be, how not squeaky to be. I'm out of my territory. I have no idea what to do about that one. Like I said, I will be in Topeka on Thursday morning. We have pretty busy schedule coming up. Janet's been working really hard on the USDA grants, of course, which are tied to our migrant program. Adam, Tom, Julie, everybody's been very busy. We will be attending HLC, which is the annual accreditation conference. HLC, of course, is our accreditor, and that will be in April. I know that one of the other things that we're working on is Janet, excuse me, Tom, Janet and Sonia are going to be working on making sure that we are Title IX sort of not approved, because we are Title IX approved, but that we have all of the training needed for the Title IX changes that we saw last year, which are relatively significant. They had some training that had been scheduled, but it just didn't work out because of being busy here in the office. Janet and Tom and Julie decided that they would push that back a little bit, but they are going to do some in-house training and then later pick up some actual certifications for the Title IX training that we need. Remember that Title IX is more than just, equity and athletics. That's a piece of it, but also, it has to do with sexual harassment in the school, in the workplace as well. And so there's several pieces, of course, of that Title IX. And I think that I had updated you. It's one of those things, we talked about it at in-service. If we are aware of something that's going on, it is our legal requirement to check on that. So if we hear something in the hallway, if we see something on social media, which we do hear and see these things, then we do have to follow up on that, which takes a whole lot of training and time when we're talking about how to appropriately follow up and what you actually do about those types of situations. So I appreciate them doing that work. And we're busy, and I want to say again how appreciative I am of all of you, and thank you to our new board member. We try not to inundate you with too much stuff, but I know that it's also important to give you the information you need so you can answer questions, policy type questions that the board would have for you. So always know that if you have questions, please let us know. Like I said, we are going to schedule some training. We will figure that out, no worries. And then after that month of training, which will be about an hour, and it is a good presentation typically by KASB, then we'll do just some board retreat. I know I've been promising this for a long time too, but maybe once we get more through the COVID, it really is, I think, important that the board has an opportunity to see some of our off-campus sites. And so once we get through the strategic planning, we really do need to be able to meet, down at CTEC. Pale is a long ways up there, but I think that it's been a long time since we've been up there and been able to see that campus. And I think as Board of Trustee members, that would be good. Another thing that I want to schedule, I was just thinking this other day, we might as well do it, is for you to at least, walk through some of our dorms here. I'd like for you to see Garrison, and we might as well, nobody's living there now. So we may do that. If we don't schedule our training for next month, I think we'll just go ahead and schedule a couple walkthroughs at least so you can see that. So, but if you have ideas about, when you could attend a meeting, a board meeting that's off campus that works out the best for you, don't hesitate to let us know. And we'll try to get that scheduled. So I'd be happy to stand for questions. Otherwise, that completes my report.
Any questions? Any more discussion?
I forgot one thing. I knew you would do that.
Oh,
I
I'm
did-
so upset.
We did get, and thank you, John, we did get a $5,000 check from Rick and Shelley Mayhew. Since the foundation, we got that check last week, so that was nice. We got some other smaller ones too, which we're always appreciative of. We're happy for $10, so, but, so I just want to point that out. We'll be, of course, writing.
Okay. If nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We'll move.
Second.
Moving to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
I think Senator Marshall took our people. Senator Marshall's meeting over in Ellis, we did not, they filled out, because, we did open back up our facilities, and so they put the request in, and then when his assistant emailed me, I said, oh, that is exactly the same time as our board meeting. So I don't know if they're still over there or not, but he's having town hall over there. He started at 5:30. I assume that's where Jason is.
Ought to all go over and ask him to help with the fire marshal.
I thought about that. Excuse me. Senator Marshall, but, yeah.